Hi everybody, could I have your attention please? We'll get this next session underway. Fantastic morning. I hope you've all had a great few hours networking. Still networking, clearly. If people could come in and take their seats, that'd be awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that scaling was a big theme for the conference this year. Obviously, we always get lots of engagement with fintech startups and equally some really strong engagement from more established fintechs and financial services firms. But everybody's interested in creating these established firms, and how do we get from the startups to the scale-ups, basically? How do we get these firms scaled successfully? So yeah, this next segment from now until the next break is going to be focused entirely on scaling. And as part of that, it would be remiss of us not to talk about funding as well. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over to another Joe from the FinTech Growth Fund. Please take it away. Come and join me up on stage, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back in Leeds. I spent 4 years here about 20 years ago at university here. And so while I was standing at King's Cross Station this morning at 7 a.m. and the trains were all cancelled, I stuck with it because I really wanted to come back to Leeds. It's definitely changed and become far posher than when I was here as a student. So I've got 10 minutes to talk to you about the FinTech Growth Fund. Just by way of an introduction, I'm Joe Parkin. I spent sort of 20 years in traditional financial services, split roughly between Goldman Sachs and BlackRock. Over the last sort of 10 years, about 10 years ago, I met a guy called Nick Hungerford, who had this crazy idea to digitalize the wealth management industry with a firm called Nutmeg. I was responsible for iShares, the ETF brand of BlackRock at the time, and I kind of fell in love with the whole thing around fintech and how you can democratize financial services, using technology, basically. Since then, I've been involved in something called the Khalifa Review, which looked at kind of the state of UK financial services and fintech in the face of Brexit, which then led into me creating and co-founding the FinTech Growth Fund. In terms of who we are, we're an investment firm that focuses on fintechs that enable the future of financial services. So we will invest into firms that are sort of disruptors, i.e. competing with existing fintech firms, but that's only about 11% of the industry. About 70% of the industry is actually B2B. So they're designed in order to support and innovate within the existing financial services kind of ecosystem. We'll talk about that in a minute. We founded it in early 2023 after sort of Khalifa Review was announced in sort of mid sort of 2021. So it took us a couple of years to get there. And then we launched our first fund, the FinTech Growth Fund 1, in September. And ever since then, we've been doing a few things. We've been building an investment pipeline, so looking for growth stage businesses. We invest in Series B and above, so 10 to 20 million ARR. We're really trying to play that growth stage. There's a lot in the UK in and around the earlier stage, be it angels or be it people like Illuminate or Augmentum, but we really want to play in that growth stage. We're targeting 500 million as a first fund, and we've got anchor backing from 5 organisations when we launched: the Barclays, NatWest, MasterCard, Peel Hunt, and London Stock Exchange Group, who kind of set us. And ever since then, we've been going out and also fundraising, initially from within the UK, but over the last sort of couple of months, we've been going wider into the Middle East and other areas in order to look at fundraising. 80% of our fund will sit in the UK. We've got a slight tail to make sure that when the UK is not doing stuff that as well as it globally, which is very rare, having sort of spent quite a long time in the fintech. We actually have a pretty broad range of fintech in the UK. We will look outside the remit of the UK, but that's just to keep us honest and to make sure that we can look at opportunities over there. Just in terms of this, a little bit more on our kind of journey, and I think the great thing that this shows is kind of the involvement that the government, the regulator, and the ongoing involvement the government and the regulator has on financial services, but also can kind of really institute some pretty major change. So as I said, the FinTech Growth Fund was a group of individuals that knew each other very, very well. We talked a lot about the growth stage funding gaps, having been at large organisations, and really been trying to partner with larger and larger organizations. When fintechs are too small, it's very hard to partner with if you're BlackRock or if you're Morgan Stanley or if you're HSBC. So we were always talking about it. And then obviously the Khalifa Review came along and really has instigated a huge number of changes within the industry, culminating with, I think, one of the most important things we'll see, in terms of, that kind of private company funding in the UK, and that's the Mansion House speech last year, when the pension funds really started to commit to these organisations. If you actually look at it, our growth stage fintechs at the moment are owned by Canadian pension funds. So someone like Ontario Teachers. The teachers in Ontario, probably benefit more from some of our great fintech businesses than any of us, which is actually really sad. And the Americans have done it, the Asians have done it. So I think, the Mansion House speech is super important. And I also think some of the changes that are going on within the local government space are actually going to be huge, because local governments, different to, I think, some of the defined contribution pension firms, they are actually local to the regions. And so not only will they invest in growth stage businesses and being sort of pushed by reform to invest more and more in growth stage businesses, but they'll do it for the benefit of that particular region. And I think that's, super important in terms of this conversation, this audience, because suddenly you'll have like additional sources of funding coming in, and actually wanting to say, hey, 50% of what we give you has to go into, fintechs in the in this area. I just thought I'd talk a little bit about the UK. And the reason why I do this is because I think we don't shout about it enough. I think we've got a phenomenal ecosystem in the UK. I think we are a true market leader. We're second only to the US. And if you start to think about the US, it's split between, various different states. The regulators are awful. They haven't issued a new banking license in, 100 years. States are suing each other. It's just not a conducive ecosystem. And when you start to look at the UK, not only do we have an incredibly vibrant ecosystem, we have everyone pulling together. So I think the government, the regulator, you've got a hub of large financial services firms, which I think you don't find anywhere else in the world. Almost every single large financial services firm in the world is based somewhere in the UK and does business here. And then I also think, we've got some phenomenal universities. I think I was reading something the other day that actually the UK has 19 of the top 100 universities in the world. The US has 20. China have 2. Like Germany and France have 1 between them. 1 each. So that again is just a huge thing. And I just got back from the Middle East. And someone sat across the table and said, you guys export 3 things: universities, the Premier League, and financial services and fintech. That's what you're best in the world at, and that's what you should focus on. So I think it's, sort of not a request, but just, as you are going about your business, I think there's a huge amount to be proud about, in terms of the UK fintech market. Last year, the UK fintech market did as much funding as the next 28 countries in Europe put together. So Macron and France can make all the news they want. There's a couple of things coming out of the Nordics and Germany, but when you start to look at the depth and breadth of the UK, it's pretty huge. And even in the face of Brexit, I think the one thing Brexit has done is allowed us to choose talent that we bring in, a lot greater. And, rather than almost being beholden to the European Union and the seasonality of the hospitality industry, we've actually been able to focus on where do we actually need to bring in talent. Just a quick thing on us. Like the thing that really kind of separates us is 4 things. The first thing is we are fintech investors. That's all we do. I think that in the UK there are some earlier stage fintech investors. I've mentioned them: Illuminate, Element, Augmentum, but there's not very many at the growth stage. At the growth stage, what we find is we're either competing with the large tech generalists, or we're competing with the big sort of pension funds like Ontario or Temasek or whoever else comes in at that later stage. So there's not really anything at the growth stage. Why does that matter? I think like the large firms are very good at kind of what I call surface layer fishing, which is like the kind of well-known names in the UK. But I don't think what has happened enough is you go deep into the UK and understand some of the really interesting challenges that are trying to solve, and some of the businesses that I met over lunch where, actually these are solving, real problems in the UK, whether it be sort of the digitalization and automation of the pension market or whatever it may be, that I think is kind of missing out on that kind of funding at growth stage. The other thing which I think is really important just to recognize is we have this really close relationship with strategic organizations. So we've got 5 as partners. We're announcing another 5 more shortly. But as I told you earlier, 70% of FinTech is actually not to disrupt. It's not the Monzos of the world or the Revoluts of the world. It's actually built to help existing financial services firms. And our relationship with those and our ability to help navigate around those financial services firms is one of the things that we've identified that FinTechs really, really struggle with. The other thing that's happening is these firms are sending an increasing amount on innovation. So I haven't actually got it today, but I've got a great graph, which I think is from McKinsey, that shows basically 5 years ago, 70% of tech spend was just to keep the lights on. So it was that spaghetti of systems they used to sort of manage and do. And I'm sure many of you in the room have actually come from businesses like that. And only 30% was actually what they called innovation. In 5 years' time, that will flip on its head. So 70% of the spend will actually be on innovation. So what you're seeing is almost a 30% increase year on year in growth in and around innovation, which is just huge if you think about, the amount of money that's going to be up to grads to actually partner with these large financial services firms. So if you can find people that, within your FinTech businesses or even your investors that have the ability to navigate these firms, it's absolutely crucial, I think, to that. Just a little bit about how we think about investing. 2 things I'd say on this. The first thing is we can be really broad, mainly because the UK is really broad. You don't find this in pretty much any other country, apart from probably the US. But we've got another slide of growth stage businesses that we've met since we launched in September, and it's a really busy slide. I think it's about 120 companies on it across all walks of life. Some of them need funding at different, like banking and finance and capital markets and pay tech, a bit more prevalent in terms of wanting funding now. But there's lots of stuff in and around prop tech and lending and wealth tech, and digital assets is starting to come back. The second thing I was going to say is how do we actually look at it from our perspective, which might be interesting. We look at it on 3 layers. The application layer, which is what the end consumer sees or what the consumer of the proposition sees, pretty much been solved for. This is a nice GUI or whatever it may be. And almost every market now in the world has solved for it. It's all table stakes. The second layer is this infrastructure layer. So we really, really like businesses that have new infrastructure, core banking technology, payment technology, whatever it may be, because that's ultimately what allows you to scale really, really quickly. And then the final thing, which we think is super important, and will be the kind of make you a champion of tomorrow, is this enabling technology layer. How are you actually using AI? We don't think of AI necessarily on its own, but how are you using AI? How are you using big data? How are you using RPA? That sort of thing, which is just kind of super important. So we love companies that are champions in their kind of respective fields. Have those 3 kind of things sort of working. One's table stakes, one allows you to scale quickly, and one is about how big you can actually become, whether you become a market leader. And I think that that's how we're kind of thinking about it. I've got sort of 20 seconds left, I think, but I just wanted to kind of just touch a little bit on our Beyond Investing program. We kind of, as one sort of largest FinTech fund in Europe, and definitely in the UK, when we started to think about, okay, well, sort of, how do we make sure that, we use our management fees in the best way possible and the responsibility we have in order to grow the ecosystem. We came up with our Beyond Investing program, which is our way of kind of how do we commit to the development and progress, ongoing progress of the ecosystem. And it's basically looking at 3 areas. Talent, DE&I, the national connectivity, which is obviously, very much about what Julian and the Whitecap Consulting guys are all over. And then the support for early stage founders, which is basically how do we push people through the ecosystem, from that perspective. We kicked off our program up north earlier in the year, and then we're rolling it out in conjunction with the universities, the local authorities, the local governments, kind of over the next 6 months. So I'm sure you'll see more stuff around it in this region, but also Manchester, Liverpool, and further in the northeast. From that perspective. That's just kind of words from our key partners. But if I leave you with one sort of key highlight, I'm always amazed. And I think it sort of started 5 or 6 years ago, but then was sort of accelerated by COVID as this movement around the UK and the cosmopolitan cities in particular around FinTech. I think it's quite incredible. And I think, people are starting to really kind of, think way more about FinTech outside of London. As I said, I was in the Middle East last week. Abu Dhabi were like not even thinking about London. They were talking about Manchester and what's going on there in terms of FinTech. It almost caught us a little bit off guard. And then we went to Saudi, and their obviously biggest commitment is around the northeast. So we ended up having a really random conversation around a bank they knew of in Middlesbrough, which I was almost blown away by. It was almost surreal. And if you think back 5 years, I don't think those particular areas, they might have known the football clubs, but they wouldn't be talking about like FinTech and businesses in those areas. So I suppose it just reinforces the message, of what we're trying to do, across the country with regards to FinTech. With that, I think I'm handing back to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, let's keep the energy high. From Joe to James, let's hear from Data on Demand, one of Leeds' homegrown, growing companies, and a FinTech as well. So yeah, over to you, James.
Hi guys. One sec. So hello, nice to meet you all. My name's James. I'm a business development manager at Data on Demand. We're a FinTech business founded in 2016. We're local to Leeds, so our office is Platform. It's the big building with the owl on the side next to the train station. You'll probably recognise it. And yeah, we're a business who decided to recruit graduates out of university to build out the sales and the techie side of the team, myself being one of those. Thanks as well to the guys at FinTech North. We are a sponsor of this event today, so thanks for the time. I'm going to keep things fairly general with this. I just wanted to use the time today for a bit of an intro to the business, explain what it is we do, because I know FinTech can be a tricky one. It's often unclear what these businesses do just by the name. And I'll also say a few words about what the graduate recruitment experience was like for me, what went well, and why it might be a good idea for other small businesses in the sector to consider recruiting grads. I did see on the attendee list as well that there's a few students here today too. I'm not sure if there actually are. There might be online. But yeah, hopefully this provides you with a bit of insight as well, just from the perspective of someone that was a student not too long ago. All right, so meet the team. Here we are. That was Christmas Just Gone, looking a bit like a Run DMC album cover. Yeah, I know Lisa from TU somewhere in the crowd here. She'll probably recognise a few faces because the company was put together by a group of ex-Call Credit employees. So Call Credit were another local business who were acquired by TransUnion in 2018. That's where Lisa works. That's the team. But what do we actually do then? I'll keep it fairly general, guys. I don't want to bore you with the details, but we supply information about UK consumers to a number of industries listed there. And the data is collected from online applications. So an example might be short-term, high-cost loan applications. Somebody will apply for a loan and we'll capture the data at that point of application. And so as you imagine, all of the actual variables that we capture are what you would expect to need to supply when applying for a loan. So just for an example, obviously your name and address, contact information, employment details, income, expenditure, family circumstances, and much more. And so just a few examples of how that can be used for the industries on the board. Lenders might want to use that information to identify vulnerable customers. Insurers might want to use it for their risk scoring when underwriting. Debt collection agencies will use contact information to regain contact with customers that they're not, they've lost contact with. Just a few examples there. One use case that we don't use the data for is marketing. There's too much red tape around that, and that's actually one of the challenges that the business faced before my time. It was the changes in GDPR implemented in 2018. It meant that we had to move away from using the data for marketing purposes and towards the purposes that I just mentioned. So yeah, hopefully this sort of briefly explains how application data can tell us a lot about an individual and how it's information that allows us to service a number of industries across and beyond financial services, just for purposes other than marketing. So like I said, I wanted to touch on my personal experience in joining a small fintech business on a growth trajectory from the perspective of a grad in their early 20s. Back in 2021, I was working the summer at my local pub in Harrogate after finishing up my degree in economics over in Liverpool. I did decide I didn't want the career path of an economist, fairly early on into the degree though, so I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, maybe considering sales. I was sure that I wanted to get my professional career started fairly soon though, ideally in a temperature controlled office because it was a hot summer and the pub didn't have any aircon. Very sweaty, as I'm sure you'd imagine. So I was recommended by a friend to use a recruitment agency who are also local to Leeds. They're called Pareto, so shout out those guys. I had a great experience with Pareto. They're an agency who specialise in recruiting for graduate sales roles. One of their value adds is that they vet the candidates quite extensively before offering the roles. So I actually attended a whole assessment day where they selected a handful of grads out of a pool of about 50. It felt a bit like The Apprentice. And I was selected out this pool and offered a list of jobs where, credit to Data on Demand, they really stood out to me. I said, sign me up for this one. I was interviewed and then offered the job along with my good friend Harry and colleague and good friend Harry, who was at Utility Week today, so he couldn't make it, but that's just him on the left there. That's us on our first day back in October 21, I believe. So the induction process was great. Those of you from the industry will know that my boss and our sales director, Simon Gregory, is very organised. He made sure that we were very well supported throughout the process. We had regular check-ins with him, which we still have now, 3 years later. This made us a team of 7 at the time, so still very small. And while there are advantages to starting at the bottom of a larger company, probably job security for the most part, it was hard to ignore the benefits that having a flat organisational structure has had for my own development. There was a steep learning curve, but Harry and I were quickly promoted to BDMs after a year or so, and we're now sector leads for sales in our own industries. Also, being a fairly small business, we've been able to be involved in strategic conversations from an early stage, having direct access to the CEO, as well as investors for their insights. That's been a luxury we probably wouldn't have had elsewhere. And so just in terms of takeaway, firstly for students, I can only speak for myself, but I would definitely at least consider using a recruitment agency. I know I was skeptical. I'd never really considered doing so until a mate had suggested it. And I know my colleague Harry said the same, actually. What you don't realise is there's probably a lot of jobs that you'll only get access through a recruitment specialist recruiter. Like it says, just don't discount starting your career at a young business or a startup. There's tons of benefits to doing so, like I just talked through. And then just for the employers here, definitely consider hiring grads for entry-level roles. There's loads of benefits to doing so, and I don't need to touch on all of them. But even just being able to shape a graduate into work in the way that you'd like them to work, they're essentially a blank canvas. And hopefully Harry and I can be a testament to this, even though my boss isn't here to advocate either way. One thing I would say is just make sure you spend some time on the employee induction process. Make sure the support's there. It was a great experience for us, but I know plenty of people that still don't know who their boss is a month into employment, for example, or, they don't know who to go to if they need some support for something. So, sounds like a bit of a nightmare, and make sure you spend some time there. To quote my colleague Kaz in the crowd just there, I would advise to recruit like you would onboard a client. That's just about everything. So thanks, guys. Thanks again to FinTech North, and hopefully there was a few useful insights.
Thank you so much, James. I think a couple of things that really stood out for me there. Firstly, it's so refreshing to get the perspective of somebody who's kind of entered the sector recently. Really important perspective to have, because we're always trying to communicate the benefits of actually going to work for a startup or a scale-up organisation. So thanks so much, and great to hear from Data on Demand, and thanks again for sponsoring the event today. It's been great to work with you. The second thing that occurred to me was, I wish I was in my mid-20s, seriously. Anyway, carrying on the theme of scaling, Julian and the Whitecap team have been working on a report alongside Streets Consulting that looks at regional fintech and indeed the scale-up. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Julian, and I think your colleague Josh as well is joining you for this. No, maybe not. Okay, just you, Julian. Take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, me again. Sorry, but this one's a short slot. Don't worry. I am delighted to have the chance to share with you a report that we published about a month ago in partnership with Innovate Finance and Streets Consulting, looking at scale-ups in the UK. I was going to do this with my colleague Josh. Unfortunately, he's not very well. He hasn't made it into Leeds. He might be watching on the online stream. So, Josh, if you are, I hope I don't mess up your slides for you. So this report looks at scale-ups. Scale-ups are important. Everywhere that you go in the UK, and we've got 6 offices around the UK at Whitecap, all of the regions would like to have more scale-ups. So people talk about startups, people talk about large employers, but the group that everybody's keen on is scale-ups, because scale-ups create more jobs faster and can have more of an impact on the economy than is possible with really early stage businesses, which they do also want. So over recent years, we've done a lot of analysis at Whitecap looking at regional fintech. We've published reports on 10 different regions of the UK outside London. And to do this report, we took data from those reports, we updated some of the data, and we added some more data. And so we ended up with a data pool of 250 regionally headquartered fintech scale-up companies. And we've analysed them. And I'm just going to tell you what happened through that analysis. So the firms were drawn from across the UK, from England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Important to note that we didn't put any regional analysis within this. So we took the group of 250 and treated them as one. We haven't tried to say which region's sort of bigger, growing faster, or whatever else might be the case. So it is to represent those regional based firms. We categorise scale-ups as firms with revenues of over 624,000 or less than 25 million. The reason we did that is because you can draw that categorisation from Companies House data, which is readily available. The purist's view of what a scale-up is derived from the Scale-Up Institute, but it's harder to get the data sets from that. So we took a slightly broader data set, and we came up with some analysis, and some of the sort of characteristics of the analysis are on this slide here, and I won't read every stat here, but I'll just call out a few of the stats. So of that 250 firms, 58% of them were based in a city, and the others were not. The vast majority were B2B, which is pretty typical in fintech. We've consistently found that across all of our regional reports, that between sort of 70 and 85% of fintech firms in any region will be primarily B2B. Some have B2B and B2C go-to-market strategies, so they get counted twice. And then the people that run fintech firms, fintech scale-ups, are typically not, they're not straight out of university, they're not graduates. You find fintech entrepreneurs are quite experienced. So you can see that the average age of the founder is 38 when the business was incorporated. So a typical fintech founder, again, there's always exceptions, but a typical fintech founder will have experience of an industry and have identified a problem and then go on to try and solve that problem. We took a sort of 3-lens view through this work. We looked at people, we looked at money, and we looked at market. And the reason we looked at those things is because you need all 3 of those if your business is going to succeed. You need talented people with the right skills in the right place. You need money. You either have that, you're lucky enough to have that money yourself, or to have a business idea that generates money quickly so that you can fund yourself, or you need to go find investors. And a market, you need customers, whether that's B2C or whether it's B2B partners. You need people to drive that revenue into your business. So the report is broken down into 3 sections, and that's the 3. And just to kind of call out, what do we find in each of those sections? One of the most interesting things that we found about people is that diversity was a big driver of performance. And those firms that had a female member of their founding team grew at 30% higher rates in terms of turnover and also in terms of employee growth than those that were male-only teams. Now, the positive impact that diversity can have on performance of businesses is not a new finding. It's not a groundbreaking thing, but we proved that it does exist and it can be evidenced in regional fintechs. The other thing that we found was that the more founders you have, the faster you grow. So not just that if you've got more founders, you sort of start at a higher growth rate and then grow the same as single founder businesses. But literally, the more you have, the more you grow. And I've got a graphic on that I'll show in a minute. Raising funding helps grow the business. But what we found is that the early stages of raising funding don't have the impact on business growth that they do when you get to about 2.5 million and beyond. So some of those sort of like smaller raises, they're not that small really, are they? £1 million fundraiser is quite a lot really, but it doesn't have the sort of the catalytic impact that you see later on. 9 out of 10 firms that went on an accelerator went on to raise funding. I guess that is a sort of that's a nod to the fact that if you have the right support and advice for a business when you start a business, that you may be more likely to succeed. The interesting thing about that stat is that less than a fifth of the firms we analysed had been on an accelerator. So 9 out of 10 of that fifth that had been on an accelerator raised funding. Imagine if all 250 of them had been on an accelerator, how much more funding they might have raised. Obviously, it's an assumption. They might have raised, how many more jobs they might have created, how good that could have been for the regional national economy. These stats, I'm not going to say too much about these. I did say that most firms are B2B. That's true. And when we talk to investors, we consistently hear from investors that B2C businesses are harder to fund. And they prefer to fund B2B fintech firms. What we found in our analysis was that if you have a B2C fintech and you have raised funding, you will grow at a faster rate than B2B firms. So I think what that's saying is if you've got a really good B2C fintech business model and concept and you can prove that it's scalable, people will invest in it and it will grow at a higher rate than you'll achieve if you're a B2B firm. This graph is just a visualization of the female founders stat. So this is showing that if you've got a female founder in your team, you will grow at a higher rate. Average annual revenues of over 500,000 compared to 400,000. And this slide here is this is just extracted from the report, but this is showing that the more founders you have, the bigger impact it has on business. So the bottom line is showing 4 founders. We didn't analyze more than that. But having 4 founders outperforms growth on funding, turnover, and employee growth above every other category. So it does seem to be a case of the more brains, the merrier. I'm not going to dwell on this slide. It's just taken from the report, and you can find it in there because I want to make sure I leave enough time for the panel that's coming after me. We supplemented the research by interviewing 10 founders. They were all from different regions of the UK. They were all from different types of businesses, and they were all pretty established and successful fintech scale-ups. So out of interest, the business that was from this region was a company called MQ, which is in the mortgage market, and is a combination of a mortgage lender and also a mortgage tech firm. They're not here today, but we'll certainly have them at a future event. What do the entrepreneurs tell us? So in those interviews, because it's quite interesting when you go beyond the data, it's always a feature of our consulting work. Like, data tells you one thing, but people tell you another. What we heard was that these guys found a problem they understood and they were really motivated to solve it. It took them longer than they thought it would do to build their businesses. Sometimes it took them a while to find the right people as well, and they were quite open about that. And sometimes that was about growth. Sometimes it was just about fit and getting into a working vibe with people. They all told us that if they had a tip, it would be to find a way to make money as soon as you can. Don't try and kind of wait for the whole thing to be ready. Find something early doors that means that you can get some money coming in because that makes life easier. Fundraising was a conversation that ended in there was a bit of common sense, I would say. These guys have sort of been around the block with funding and were a little bit wary of inflated valuations, and people chasing investment for the wrong reasons. I'm just going to keep going because I'm right at time now. So what else did we find? What needs to happen, rather, was the thing the report concludes with. So we found it didn't really matter where you were, as it was more about what you did. Obviously, don't go it alone. Have female founders in your team, kind of implied from what we said, and join an accelerator. No surprise that was a recommendation based on the stats. And we also had some asks of policymakers on a national basis, which was really geared around, like, think nationally. It doesn't seem that location matters, so therefore let's support the growth of fintech across the UK. Let's try and make it less risky for entrepreneurs. It's a difficult thing to do, to come out of a full-time role and try and build a business when you have no revenue. You've seen that the average age of the founders is 38. A lot of people at that time in life have got young families. It's not everybody, obviously, but that can make it really difficult. So support those organisations and encourage diversity in the leadership of fintech firms. So you can find this report on the Whitecap website. It's not that long. It's pretty data rich, though, and I think it kind of contains a combination of good tips for entrepreneurs, but also for investors, or even anybody that's looking to understand the market, be a mentor, be an advisor to fintech firms. So, so I hope you guys found it useful, and thank you very much. So now, I'm now going to welcome onto stage Julia Streets from Streets Consulting. Streets was one of our partners in the research, along with Innovative Finance, and Julia is going to chair a panel to talk about scaling fintech. So, Julia, over to you. Thank you.
Let me welcome the panelists straight up, if you would. Why don't you come on up, and while you're doing that, I'll do some introductions so everybody knows who is who. I've got about 40 minutes on the clock, and I know that timing is tight, so I'm going to get straight into it as we go through. Now, this is a phenomenal panel because we have a real mix of characters and also experience as well. So let me just open up my document, which of course is going to let me go. So, actually, I'll tell you what, the way we're going to begin is I'm going to invite each of you just to introduce yourself, your organisation, and just for each of you just get a sense of where you are in your journey of funding. Because, Jordan, I'm going to start with you. You've had a fascinating career both as in the industry, as a founder, and also now supporting founders. So why don't you take it away?
Thank you very much, Julia. So, hi, I'm Jordan Darg. I'm the co-founder of Lifted Ventures. We're a Leeds-based company, but we operate right across the UK, but outside of London. We support female founders to access early-stage investments. So, at the core of what we have is an angel investor network, which is built up of both men and women. We've also got a vast co-investor network as well. Myself and my amazing co-founder, Helen Oldham, were the original co-leaders of North Invest and the original founders of Fund Her North and Women Angels of the North. So for all, Lifted Ventures is relatively new. Helen and I have been in the industry for a number of years, worked together for over 8 years now, supporting and mentoring early stage founders and helping those businesses on their scale journey.
And I love the fact that not only do you have that history, but also you are an entrepreneur yourself. You're at early stage in your journey, but working really closely and advising as well. Magic. Max, can I come to you next? Let's go down the panel and then we'll throw it around a little.
Thank you. So, hello, I'm Max. I'm Director of Engineering for LHV Bank. We are originally an Estonian financial institution, publicly listed on the Baltic Stock Exchange, and then been going for 25 years in the Baltics. But in 2018, we set up our UK-based banking services business, which has been growing pretty strongly since then. You probably haven't heard of us, but you've probably heard of some of our customers, the likes of Coinbase, TransferWise, Monies, Currency Cloud. All use our account and payment services. So it's quite possible that you may have used some of our services behind the scenes. In terms of our journey, about just over 2 years ago, there's probably about 10 people in the UK side of the business, and we're now just approaching 200. So the last couple of years have been some good growth. Last year, in fact, just over a year ago, we got our UK banking license. Thanks, Brexit, for making us do that. But we got the license, which has been a massive enabler for us. And since then, we've been moving from just banking services into SME lending and savings as well.
And thank you for sharing the story of kind of not only the people growth, which we're going to come on to because that's one of the anchors of the discussion, but also thinking through how you're also working with some of those fast growth companies as well and empowering their growth. So it's the kind of B2B and B2B2C. Phenomenal. Thank you, Max. Mohammed Farouk, let's bring you in here because I know you've got a fascinating perspective in terms of not only the structure of the organization, but also your funding journey.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Farouk. So I come from a company called Excelia, which is a consulting company. And I'm not going to talk about a lot on the consulting side of things. I'm going to talk about two of our ventures, which is called, one of them is ISO Robot, which has been up and running for the last 6 years. And it's self-funded. We've never taken any money from outside so far. So for the last 6 years, we have grown up to a valuation of $200 million, which is of our own efforts as a brilliant team, right? And after taking inspiration from that growth, I thought, if me and my team can build a team of this size, or by build a business of this size, we can also give the opportunity to others. That's when we've started something called Design Space, where anybody who's got a great digital idea, that works as an innovation engine for them to turn their idea into a successful company. Right. So we slowly started collaborating with the local entities and, so the innovation ecosystem locally. And hopefully we would be connecting with you all soon. Yeah. So the vision is to create 300 companies in the next 3 years. So that's not my companies or our companies. Basically, we all want you to come up with great ideas and, that can be turned into great digital ventures. Yeah, so that's all from my side.
So it started from nowhere, built your own, did really well with your own money, and then now have created a structure to enable those hundreds and hundreds of businesses, and I suspect many, many more. But Farouk, thank you very much indeed. And last but not least is Richard Carter, who's the CEO of Lenvy. So Richard, talk to us about your business and also your funding journey.
Good afternoon. So I'm Richard Carter, Chief Executive of Lenvy. We're a Leeds-based FinTech organisation. We specialise in providing loan management technology. I can pretty much guarantee that 95% of you have used our platform at some point over your lives. You just don't realise it. We power the majority of the UK lending market, whether that's for unsecured loans, mobile phone handsets, car finance, etc. We've got a very deep penetration there. So about 350 staff in total. About 180 of those are based in the Leeds region. We've got an office down in Cardiff, and some of our colleagues work in Europe as well. Our funding journey is quite interesting, really. We started off as an entrepreneurial business. Myself and a colleague founded our organisation. We grew it without any external funding, which is good in some respects. It's bad in others because, it's your house that's on the line fundamentally when you get to that point. And then we sold it to a corporate, and now we're part of a much larger corporate organisation. That's got some good bits attached to it. You always know you're going to get paid at the end of the month because there's a big bank sitting behind it. But there are some drawbacks with it as well, which we can talk about a little bit later.
And we're certainly going to explore the dynamics of bringing in money and then also how you go and find the money as well. We'll get on to that for sure. I wonder if I could just take a second, just who on earth I am. So Streets Consulting is so proud to work with Whitecap in many, many ways. One was we've always been really committed to the growth and the fintech industry right the way across the UK, indeed across the world. So we work with startups, scale-ups, global organisations and key industry associations. So it's a busy day for us today because we've also been working with Supertech to launch their roadmap for the next 10 years. And we do kind of three things. So one is kind of business development, marketing, comms. It's all about brand. It's about cut through. How do you basically kind of differentiate from your market in order to drive growth? But also a really key piece is when we think campaigns and content, it's the coaching as well. So working with the leaders of tomorrow and also, so very much kind of C-suite level, but those scaling businesses that have to bring their leadership team up to higher account to drive and empower that growth, which sort of, I think makes us different. But the important thing is about never forget the humans in the mix. So let's start with the humans in the mix. It's a slightly cheesy segue, but could not be more appropriate really, because we've got a little sense of how many people sort of in your organizations from some of you. I suppose my key question is, and Richard, can I start with you on this one, which is when you think about the people in your organisation, what has been the most propelling factor?
Just fundamentally talent. You just got to recruit people who are smarter than you. In my case, it's not that difficult, but you've got to make sure that you look for diversity of opinion. So you might have, as a founder, you might have your own view about what you want to do with an organisation, what your strategy is, but you've got to be willing to listen to other people as well. You've got to take views and soundings from people who work for you, people who may want to work for you, people who are leaving you to go somewhere else. So I think it's all about, fundamentally, it comes down to communication and making sure you've got that diversity of opinion in the business.
And Farouk, can I bring you in here? Because obviously you're now thinking about how you help and empower other businesses as well. Talk to us a little bit about the growth in your organisation, but also as you look to the others that you're seeking to help, what do you look for in terms of team and talent and people?
I would say, just picking from what Richard was saying, so basically, the first thing is definitely the communication, so articulating a vision, because many a times we assume that, okay, I've communicated enough and they know everything about the business. So articulating a vision, what exactly we're trying to do as a business, it's very, very important. And the second thing is that, when people come with great ideas, they always feel that, okay, I've got a great idea, this is going to be the best in the world. And so bringing them down with the basics and telling that, you think about your people, you think about your money, you think about your market, and you think about your business model and the finances, so basically, so letting them know that, okay, there are some basics to follow. Okay, you can always dream big, but so it is always playing that parent role, so coming in and telling them, hey, you know what, you're exciting, you've got a group of amazing people, but let's also make sure that you understand the market, and most importantly, clarity on your product, on your business model, which is the most important factor, I believe, which makes a big difference.
And the communication that runs through that is crystal clear, because that's a really clear element to it. But I also want to bring in the conversation that's come up a number of times. Indeed, I really applaud the event for starting with the question of diversity. And Max, when you look at your team, talk to us a bit about the diversity in your team.
Absolutely. So I think, talent, communication, absolutely crucial, but there's, the cultural factor here is so important. You need to have a team that is able to work. If you've got a talented team, you need to let them work at their best, right? And it was really good to hear the panel earlier about neurodiversity. And I think a lot of us are missing a trick here in that if you build a team that is good for neurodivergent people, you're building a team that's good for everyone, right? It's not just the neurodivergent people that benefit from that. So we've got a real mix of people across our business, both, diversity in terms of every factor. And I think, when looking to build a team or to grow a team, absolutely. I think you look at any recruitment process, they're going to really drill down onto the capability aspect of it. But I think you really need to focus in on who is the right person for me to bring into this particular role. Have I got a good mix of people? And I'm not talking about positively discriminating here. I'm talking about really opening up the talent pool as much as possible, but then really drilling into the cultural side of things. Because there are some things that are absolutely non-negotiable when it comes to culture. And none of those things are where you came from, what your opinions are, the less important things. But what's really important is, do you care? Are you respectful? Are you hungry? Do you want to progress? So I think, I'd imagine that pretty much all of you here are going to have company values at your business, and you'll be able to regurgitate them quite easily. That's the easy part. The hard part is living it every single day and giving examples as a leader in the business as to why those cultures matter. For us, our company values are agile, kind of explains itself, never satisfied, and no bullshit. And that's one that often gets a wry smile when you look in corporate environments, but actually it really explains who we are as a business and how we actually operate. Is, we cut through the crap, we get straight to the point, and we do that when we're dealing with customers, we do that when we're dealing with consumers as well.
And of course, the acid test with any sort of culture is, do they do that when nobody's looking? Yes. That is always the key thing. Yeah. But let's talk also about, what people tend to underestimate in talent. Now, again, I was talking about your career, Jordan, and your role today. I mean, what do you think is are there 2 or 3 things that people tend to underestimate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my first venture was actually in recruitment. And I was part of the team that scaled that business and then exit. And then my next business was also recruitment as well. And one of the things that we took from that environment was, I never actually looked at people's CVs. I met with every single person because it was more about the culture, it was more about the person, it was all about the personable fit within an organisation. That was key to what our clients wanted and needed. And it actually went on to build a platform which essentially was looking at the people and the skills that you have within an organisation and how they fit into an organisation that's changing, i.e. growing and scaling. And that was how, for me, was a really pinnacle point in my learning where I went, actually, the people who start off in the journey is not often the people who continue in that journey. Or as an organisation, you've got to enable those people to grow and diversify their skills. And James, I was listening to you earlier, and by the way, a fantastic presentation, really well done. And actually, some of the best people who I've ever worked with have actually been graduates because they're willing to learn, they're very passionate about the jobs that they're doing. They can easily transition into new types of roles. They can adapt easily with an organisation. And for me, that is a fundamental piece to actually being able to scale an organisation. You need, going back to your point, a real diverse team in terms of stages of experience and skills.
And I think that's so true. And one of the fascinating things now is in financial services, we've got 5 generations working together we've never had before. And with so many of the clients that I'm sort of working with, the challenge tends to be the older generations who also need to be supported as they're trying to adapt in so many ways to how I think your point about transformation and change is really, really key on that. I wonder if we can move the conversation on to the second pillar, which is all about markets. Now, we won't get into, is it B2B or is it B2B or B2C or is it peer-to-peer or whatever. But what I do really want to get into is, which I think is fascinating for every entrepreneur or budding entrepreneur or indeed investor to think about, is we talk to our clients a lot about creating your own energy and creating your own destiny in a way, and also getting cuts through. So I kind of look at that, how do you identify, or have you had any tipping points that have become significant moments that have really transformed your growth? So I'd love to hear views on that. Farouk, can I come to you first?
Yeah. So especially talking about ISO Robot, which is an enterprise management system software. So it was not an overnight idea. So what happened was we still work with a lot of government entities back in the Middle East, and we do a lot of consulting engagements. At the end of consulting engagements, so we've literally seen them, getting, are kind of handicapped. They don't know where to go. They go and trusted spreadsheets after that, to manage the policies and processes and controls, right? So that was the first thing. So either they buy a lot of software which does not talk to each other, or they stick to spreadsheets. So we thought, why can't we design one software which takes care of the governance, risk, compliance, internal audit, and strategy, all of them together, right? So we started building that with our customers, existing customers. So we built a skeleton. We went back to them and say that, okay, we built this. What else would you like to see? I think that is what transformed, because they were the ambassadors. So that was the first thing. And the second element was basically propelled our growth was basically, we've been working with a lot of government entities using our system, but most excitingly, a prime minister's office from a Middle Eastern country came to us and saying that, okay, you're serving 4 of our federal entities right now. We have 60 federal entities. What if we give you, 10 each every time to execute or, launch a software into those companies or those government organizations? Would you like to take that as a chance? But we want that to be scalable, but most interestingly, we want to have an analytics engine on top of it where I can see everything completely visible. That gave us a new business model, which is called enterprise ecosystem. So we can go into any industry right now and say that, okay, you being the administrator, you can play with your entire ecosystem. And so even if we give the masterpiece for free, all the users can pay us maybe a $10,000 or a $20,000 or whatever is the size. So that gives us a very strong ARR. So yeah, so these were the two important things I would say.
I was going to say, and there's some big things come out. One of them is almost like the power of the user group and the customer engagement to tell you. And Max, I'm going to come on to you in a second to kind of pick up on that and see if there's anything from it. But also the other thing about, that must be the most glorious day, by the way, when a client says to you, can we give you 10 more every time, But the ability to be able to do that at some appropriate pace. So the tipping point could run away from you, but actually to be able to restructure the business in response to that. Max, from the world of engineering, talk to us about tipping points in your world.
Yeah, I mean, so there's some that jump straight out. I mean, obviously getting the UK license was a huge one, massive enabler for us. But following on from that was launching our UK platform. I think it sounds so obvious, but what you're saying there, listening to your customers, the answers are there. They're going to tell you, especially if they're already engaged with you. If we were all working within financial regulated markets, you know how difficult it can be to bring a new supplier on, and chances are your customers are going to want to get something from you if they can, because it saves them a heap of paperwork, right? So listen to them, and it's not just B2B relationships, it's B2C as well. Create those user groups, understand what your users want. But we find ourselves in a really interesting position now where we're critical infrastructure for many of our customers, and we process approaching 10% of faster payment transactions in Europe. So if we have a major incident, Coinbase have a major incident. So we can't, we have to put extreme rigor on the work that we do. But at the same time, off the back of getting this UK license, we're now trialing a bunch of different new markets. And we want to be able to move quickly there. We want to be able to test markets, and we don't want to be kind of held back with the same complexities of having critical payment infrastructure. So we have this balance here of how can we maintain customer duty, how can we maintain stability whilst also being able to move out, test markets, validate them, get the data that we need from our customers, and go into the ones that work.
And the ability to kind of spin that up sort of quite quickly. But do you mind if I ask you just a follow-up question on that, which is, to what extent does the fact that you've got the kind of the regulatory stamp of approval here help you as you go into other markets, because you've got proof of, and you've got evidence, and you've got regulatory support? That's
absolutely huge. Yeah. So first of all, we had a European banking license previously, and that was a big factor in us getting our UK banking license, because it wasn't like we were coming to the table as a brand new player saying, hey, we've got this plan for banking services. It's, we had a successful business. So that really helped with getting that banking license approved. But now that we have that, it's without restrictions. So there is no legal hurdle for us to go over to move into additional markets. So it's a huge enabler there, absolutely massive.
Yeah, Jordan, can I bring you in here, because in addition to being the entrepreneur yourself, and then also for your history as well, but you're an advisor, you're a NED, you sit on many boards as well, and as you're working with other businesses, so imagine this is your investor base sitting right in front of you. How do you work with them to help them identify some of those tipping points that are going to really propel the business forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes right back down to drumming down into who your customer really is right at the beginning, and actually really understanding what they want, how they want it, when they want it, and actually what price they're willing to pay for it. And I think one of the things that I always would advise a business is to understand maybe what some of those risks are as well with those customers, because markets can transition very quickly. I work with quite early stage organizations up to that Series A, I would say. And I've seen many times where an entrepreneur has set up on a journey. They've got a fantastic market implementation plan. They really understand the customers, and things change quickly. And when things change quickly, it's not about, right, okay, that's the business gone. It's how you transition. So how do you de-risk for the future? What other opportunities are available? And actually getting the entrepreneur to think about that and think outside of the box in that approach actually does lead them into new markets without them actually realizing. And that's where the tipping point really does occur. What becomes the most valuable market for them? And I guess also as well, I work across various sectors and industries. And have seen obviously the transition since, and I hate to mention the word, but COVID, for example, we are seeing some of the best businesses now because they've actually pivoted, gone through that market penetration, and actually proved themselves as founders and as entrepreneurs in their own right, because they've been able to be resilient and break down some of the barriers and challenges which they were having.
And when you look from the sort of investor side of the table, when we talk to kind of various investment firms and they're sort of in discussion or assessment, we work with lots of accelerators. And and then one of the things I was looking at is evidence of having pivoted, evidence of having failed fast, and evidence also of even having failed, because the learning that you have through that is quite extraordinary. Richard, anything you'd add in terms of, your organization and its success journey? What have been some of those significant moments?
We've had a couple of things, actually. I think when I look back over my career, one of the things that strikes me about the achievements we've made is quite a lot of it has been based on luck. It's been about being in the right place at the right time and just having the right conversation with somebody. So many years ago, back in 2004, I think it was, I was sat with a large bank down in Canary Wharf talking about a particular problem that they had. And the chap said, "Oh, what we need is someone to do this." And I said, "Well, I think we could maybe do that. If we could do that, would you want to buy it from us?" And it was a relatively small transaction. It was only about £30,000 a year or something like that. We are now the dominant provider of that service in the UK. And it turns over about £4.5 million. And it was just based off that one conversation. If I'd not been in the room with that chap at that time, we would not be doing that revenue line right now. So what I take from that is that for innovation, you've got to go out with an open mind. You've got to talk to as many people as you can. You pick up ideas along the way. So that's unintentional innovation. We then have intentional innovation in our business. So over the course of last year, we set aside 2 whole weeks for the whole of our tech team. 3 of my colleagues are over there. And we gave them the tools to go and play with AI. There was no specific objective behind it. We didn't expect them to come up with a product. There were no revenue obligations associated with it. We just said, here's some tools. It's a big thing. Go and have a play. Think what you can do with it. We got some weird and wonderful, wacky ideas that came out that we couldn't commercialize. But we got one, which is absolutely amazing. We've deployed that within our contact center now. We've saved hours and hours of effort every day just from that intentional innovation. And part of that comes, again, I come back to my point about having the right people with the right skills there who've got that curious outlook on life. And in fact, curiosity is one of our values. One of the others is being bold and being able to make that decision and put the investment in. If you do those things, you're going to get a return on it fundamentally. So I'd say that innovation comes from the intentional work you do and also the odd conversations that you have from time to time.
On the stage as well, you clearly all agree with that, and it's fascinating hearing people talk about how they carve out time very, very intentionally on that. But also the risk of stating the blindingly obvious. But that's why events like this are so important, because it could just take one conversation to really transform a business or to unlock an idea. I do want to kind of dedicate the lion's share of the conversation to the all-important conversation regarding money, because I think that's probably what everybody's super keen to hear about. Let's just think about, I mean, Jordan, let me come to you first of all. You know, you heard in the research findings earlier about the importance of having female founders, and yet we know that the investment, and actually only 16% of the industry has a female founder. I know it's something you're very passionate about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just congratulations on that report. It was absolutely fantastic. So well done. Yeah, Julia, we as an organisation, we hear so often around, obviously, the challenges for female founders being able to raise capital, and that percentage, 2% of all capital deployed goes into female founders. But really for us, you know, we've heard that a lot. It's now actually about the business benefits. So when you release this report with 30% figure on, we were like, and this is exactly why we keep saying what we're saying. There is absolutely business benefits to backing female founders, diverse teams, because actually they do make businesses grow. If you think about individual people and how the mindsets work, it really does explore new opportunities. It's very innovative, and actually you can often move at pace as well. The other thing as well is, obviously, when capital has been deployed into female founding teams and co-founding teams, businesses have actually been able to scale quicker and reach exits. So we're seeing more exits coming out of female co-founded teams as well. So again, you know, it's a really, really important factor in that perspective. I think as well as one of the big things for me, and going back to raising investment, but actually what becomes a really good opportunity for investors is the ability to recruit and retain great talent. Going back to the point that we started on, and actually there is research and data out there that also indicates that diverse founding teams and female co-founded teams are actually find it easier to recruit and retain staff members, and that has been absolutely fundamentally important and an influential part of how they've actually gone on to raise investment as well, because they've had the suitable set of skills to bring that business forward.
And I hear entrepreneurs talk a lot about the fight for talent. So if there's ever a compelling reason, I mean, it is right there. Thank you for your thoughts on that. And I'm delighted the research helped, by the way.
It was
We're
fantastic,
always
so
delighted
thank
to hear
you.
that, aren't we? No, but it's absolutely true. And I've always said to people, if you think that the diversity conversation is just one of those nice to have, of its time discussions, I'm afraid you are behind the curve, because the organisations who get it are powering ahead and leaving you behind. So, but let me, Farouk, I'd love to kind of bring your thoughts in here about, because as I said earlier, you actually, you're privately funded. And please do take the mic, because I'm curious to hear kind of your reasons for why, when you've got this incredible growth journey, but presumably that's had some conversations with people gone, how do we get in to be part of your business?
Can you repeat that question?
Just in terms of your funding journey. And it says, you decided to stay private.
Yeah. I would say, so it was, I would say, a lot of ignorance about the funding journey in the beginning. I did not really know about how funding works in the beginning, because we are too much involved in the business, a lot to manage, a lot of multitasking. And luckily, we had the money from our business to fund our business all the way through. And we believe that, okay, it is the best way to do that, because we wanted to stay in control about the product we want to build. We did not want to be commoditized, so let's say some big boys comes in, buy a certain level of controls, and then so the product development goes into a different direction, like you said rightly, Richard. So the innovation stops at some point, right? That was one reason. But we've also learned a lot during this journey, which is why so when we started with this design space piece, we, for the first thing, we make sure that we bring the funding ecosystem into the panel first, and we encourage our founders who's coming with the great ideas to explore this. We don't force them to go for the funding. We say that, okay, if you're capable enough, you can manage it yourself, but if you can bootstrap it, but there's a point, you'll have to consider the funding, and these are the benefits out of it. So we give them those insights and let them take those decisions rather than forcing them to go with the flow. I would seriously say my personal opinion earlier was, funding was not really required if you have got the money. But over a period of time, so as I said, it was my ignorance, so and I literally learned that, so if you really need to scale, you need a lot of brains who understands, so how do you create new business models, corporate financing, and all this, venture capital aspects of the business as well. That adds a lot of value to the business. So I think that's also very, very important. So sometimes we think that, okay, we know a lot, but that's not the case.
Yeah,
right?
And this is really interesting, because it's partly about sort of democratizing the conversation about, should we fundraise or should we stay as we are? But also the dynamics shift considerably when that happens. Richard, I need to bring you in here, because you said it's kind of two co-founders at the beginning, probably doing very nicely, thank you. But as you said, there are risks of putting your life on the line, because it's your paycheck essentially. But then the world changes when you go out and bring funders in and investors. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we had a business, and our core metric was something we called DTD, Days to Disaster. And that was how much cash we got in the bank, how many invoices do we have to pay, when's the salary due, when does the money run out. We didn't really care about revenue, we didn't care too much about profitability. We were solely managing on the basis of cash. And you end up, in that scenario, you run your business in a completely different way. You're trying to invest for the long term, but you've also got a view on, well, do you know what, I should maybe do that deal today, because we could do with the cash, we're going to need it at some point in the future. You get the large organizations that kind of mess you around on payments, and they take the 30 days that you want and they stretch it to 60, and then they put all sorts of other hoops and jumps in the way that make it 90, and then it's 120, and then they try and chip you on the numbers. We actually got to a point one Christmas Eve where we'd kind of gone past our days to disaster point. This is many, many years ago. And we had to make a call to this particular organisation, a large UK bank, and say, either you pay us today or there's no service in a few days' time, because we're just not going to be here. And they paid immediately. And immediately after that, they paid on the nose every 30 days. There were no issues with it. And I think as a founder, when you go through that period, I mentioned earlier about, it's great because you get all of the spoils. When you sell your business at some point, you can potentially make a load of money. But on those occasions when you don't, you're sitting there thinking, shit, if this all goes wrong in a bad way. I can't just go get another job somewhere else. I've got to make sure I see this thing through to the end. And I've got all of these people who work for us that we need to make sure that they're safe and they can pay their mortgages, etc. So when it comes to the fundraising, we talked about this earlier. What I would say to people is just don't be greedy. All of the press articles that you see around the place are for organisations that have sold their money for a boatload of cash and they're rolling in it and they've got fantastic multiples of this, that, and the other. There's not many organisations that actually do that. Those are just the headlines that people quote. I think if you look beneath it, you just need to look at something at some point. I mean, coming to your point earlier, Julian, about average founders being 38 or 41 or something like that. You look in your own lifestyle, you think, oh, I've got a house, got a mortgage, I've got cars, I've got kids. You've got to make sure they're all secure. So I think you have to take a pragmatic view as to when you take the funding, how much you take and what valuation you put on it.
And it's very easy to look at, as you say, the headlines and kind of see the stories coming through. I mean, Max, you have a slightly different situation because you have somebody who's holding the purse strings for you, but that doesn't necessarily make for a comfortable day. Let's talk us through the dynamics of that, because some people might be thinking that's a way that their organisation perhaps could go.
Absolutely right. So yeah, I'm in a fortunate position in that I get to think more about spending the money than raising it. So we're self-funded by our parent company, LHV Group, but they are publicly listed. So it's not just coming from someone's back pocket; it is coming from the market. And we funded our UK expansion through a share offering. It was 400% oversubscribed, and we took a lot of confidence from that. The market clearly thinks what we're doing is the right thing. But obviously, that just means that, in many ways, for me, it's quite good. I'm within engineering. I'm thinking about what I can build, and if I know what I've got, which is the situation, I know what I can build. And a big part of what I'm looking at now, and what I imagine a lot of other businesses are looking at now, is how can we do more with what we've got. There's been a lot of financial uncertainty across the markets at the moment. So it's really, we'll ring the AI bell. I'm about to mention AI, where everyone is looking at how they can utilize that, and it was how we can use AI, how we can focus on operational efficiency. But yeah, just for me, it kind of makes my life a lot easier, and it's interesting hearing the story that you have there, because I don't have that. It's much easier for me, and I guess that puts me in a very beneficial position.
But also having been through that journey of having a parent company that's listed, the shareholder dynamics shift quite considerably when you have who are your shareholders, and you have to report to them as well. I suppose there's kind of two questions I'd love to explore. I'm just going to throw it open to anybody who'd like to take it. One of them is, when you look at the funding you'll anticipate you'll need, what concerns you the most? And that could be internal funding, that could be external funding. Open conversation.
Could I kickstart this one, Julie, please? So it's not my personal thoughts, what we've actually seen in the marketplace, to be fair. And actually what we have seen more recently as the first round of funding that a founder would look to raise is not always the hardest round of funding. We're actually finding that it can be actually the third or fourth round of funding. And that's purely because of the market conditions that have been happening over the course of the last sort of couple of years. SaaS companies last year, there was research again done, and SaaS companies alone last year actually made less money than what they did the previous year, and that's down to market conditions. So I guess what I'm saying here is, obviously, if you are on that fundraising journey, you may have done your first round of funding and you might think that's the biggest one done. You've got to think about and consider that next round of funding very quickly, or even go into your first round of funding with a strategy, but also a plan B, because I've seen great companies and great founders fall over because they haven't got that second, third, fourth round of funding.
I'm only nodding and smiling because this is what our clients are thinking about all the time, and it used to be that the first million was the hardest million. Now it's a case of, we'll take the easy million, as you do, but then be very, very clear about the dynamics of your next. And by the way, what might have won a couple of years ago may not win tomorrow. Really interesting. Love to hear other voices on that question.
If I may add on, it's whatever fund comes in, the most important question is that to know who's coming in with that money, right? And what kind of alignment you have, how much are you negotiating on your vision, right? If it is too much, it's difficult, right? Sometimes just because you're getting a money, you are almost end of your runway, and so you end up sacrificing a lot, not in terms of your shareholding or equity, but more in terms of the journey you want to drive, right? So that's more important. So for me, I would say it's who's coming, and if you can have the right alignment even on an exit point. So if I think that, okay, I don't want to sell, but the funder comes in and it says that, okay, I want you to exit in 3 years, right? So that's a serious conflict. So I think these alignments, it sounds simple, but it makes a huge difference.
They're so fundamental, aren't they? I feel like we could have an entire panel on exit alone, but we've literally got a couple of minutes left. I wonder, Richard, do you mind if I move the conversation on a fraction? But I will start with you, actually, because I'd love to do a bit of a call to action in our final kind of closing remarks. And I'd love to hear from each of you about what do we need. Richard, let me start with you in terms of policymakers, and each of you I'm going to ask you a slightly different angle on it. So what do you think we as an industry need from our policymakers?
I don't want to be political.
Go for it.
I can't help it. I quite like an election, really. And the sooner the better. And I say that in a non-political context. Just some form of stability, that we know where we are. We know if there's going to be a new government, what their plans are. I'd like to see a better view about interest rates. It's good to see that inflation's come down, which is a benefit to all of us, but interest rates are crippling the organisations that are trying to raise funds at the moment and the debt that they're carrying.
Yeah. Farouk, can I come to you next in terms of what do you need from the ecosystem?
I think from the ecosystem, the first thing is that, the ecosystem has to have an awareness of what is this ecosystem all about and the role of each one of you. So let's say if I talk about from a design space perspective where we are trying to create a lot of exciting ventures. So what's happening is that, so when I go to a government authority, say West Yorkshire Combined Authority or from a council, they all have amazing initiative. But when I go to a person with great idea, he's not even aware of it, right? So that awareness is the critical factor, I would say, just to give them, how do we sell that to the audience? So that's the most important factor for me, yeah.
I'm going to ask the two of you to be relatively quick because I know you also have to get a train. So I need to make sure I get you off the stage on time. But Max, I'd love to ask you, what do you need from your customers?
Keep speaking to us, really. Keep that dialogue open. I want to hear everything that you need. We're here to support you. And just to touch upon your point as well there for the ecosystem, I think, if any company that's scaling up, we've already spoken a lot about the importance of people there. You need people and you'll be growing your organizations all over. What I love about seeing FinTech North and all these other groups is we're calling out the point that needs to be called out again and again, that it's not just London. London's great. There's a lot of really good talent there, but there is so much talent around the country and not enough companies tap into that.
The last word for the panel. I suppose my question is, what's your call to action for investors?
More role models. We need more role models to be in the industry. So we need more investors, but more founders to be supporting other founders, because actually that's the people who help businesses scale.
Wonderful. I hope you'll join me in thanking the panel. It's been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you all so much. It's been brilliant. Thank you. All right, excellent. So I'm going to pass the mic back to... Is it back to Ryan? Ryan, are you coming up to do the link? Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And thank you to Julia as well. Can we get a round of applause for Julia for doing a great job of chairing? Cool, so that rounds off the sort of scaling session there, the first afternoon session. We heard from Data on Demand, who gave a perspective of a scaling fintech. We heard from Julian, who gave the findings and recommendations from his Scaling UK FinTech report. And then who else did we have? Sorry about this. We had a FinTech Growth Fund who shared a bit more about funding to scale FinTech across the UK. And of course, we finished with the panel, various perspectives from across the ecosystem about scaling FinTech. We've got a short break now, 20 minutes, and then we're back in here at 3:10 for a FinTech North skills mission and panel discussion, followed by the keynote from FinTech Scotland. We talk about the Financial Regulation Innovation Lab, And then a RegTech showcase, which is like a Dragon's Den style 5-minute pitching segment for various RegTech organisations from Leeds, and then another break. So yeah, back in here around 1:10, if that's all right, guys. Cheers.